Everyone in the village of Alderbrook spoke of her, though no one truly knew her. She lived alone at the edge of the forest, in a weathered cottage with ivy climbing its walls and wind chimes singing stories of time. Some called her mad, others wise. But all agreed on one thing: the old woman knew something the rest didn't. It was on a rainy Thursday morning when Emily, 26 and hollow-eyed, knocked on her door. Emily's life had become a quiet storm, one that no one else seemed to hear. On the outside, she had what others called enough: a job, an apartment, a phone full of contacts, but inside she was drowning in silence. The weight of loneliness and endless comparisons pressed on her chest like a stone. Every smile she wore in public felt stitched onto a face she no longer recognized. Nothing brought her joy, not music, not books, not even the soft gaze of a sunset. "I heard you can help people," she whispered when the old woman opened the door. The old woman studied her for a long moment before stepping aside. "Help?" she repeated gently. "No, child. I just offer tea and truth." But most turn away after the first sip. Emily entered. The old woman, whose name was Grace, handed her a cup of cinnamon bark tea. "Tell me," she said, "what do you think happiness is?" Emily didn't know how to answer. "Maybe being at peace," she tried. Grace smiled. "That's what I used to think too." She led Emily outside to a small garden, wild and beautiful. Flowers of every kind bloomed beside weeds. A crooked path led to a pond that shimmered even in the gray light. "Let me tell you a story," Grace began. "Once there was a young woman just like you. She thought happiness came from getting everything right. She chased perfection, perfect body, perfect love, perfect job. But even when she reached those things, her heart stayed heavy. Why?" Emily shook her head. "Because her mind was her prison, and no amount of decoration could change the bars." Grace leaned closer. The moment she changed her thoughts, her world began to shift. Emily stared. "Are you talking about yourself?" Grace nodded. "I chased happiness for years, but happiness isn't something you find. It's something you allow. And you can't allow it while feeding your mind poison every day." Emily frowned. Poison? Comparison, regret, blame, self-hate. These thoughts are silent killers. Over the next week, Grace gave Emily simple tasks. Not therapy, not grand goals, just daily mental rituals. On day 1, Grace said, "Catch one negative thought. Replace it with a curious one." When Emily caught herself thinking, "I'm not enough," she tried, "Why do I believe that? Who told me that? And were they right?" On day 2, Grace asked her to list 3 small things she had ignored that day, things she could be grateful for. Emily wrote, "The way the rain tapped the window, how the soup smelled like childhood. That moment a dog winked at me through the bus window." And on day 3, Grace said, "Do one thing today just to be kind, not for approval, just because." Emily brought a sandwich to a man sitting outside the pharmacy. His eyes watered, not from hunger, from being seen. The days turned into a rhythm. Emily kept returning to Grace's cottage. They rarely spoke about pain directly, but Grace's stories were bridges between wounds and wisdom. One day, Grace led her to the pond. The water was still, reflecting the clouds above. "Throw this pebble in," she said. Emily did. The ripples stretched across the water. "That's what a single positive thought does," Grace said. "Your mind is the pond. The ripple reaches places you don't expect." "But how do I keep it going?" Emily asked. "What if I fall back?" Grace smiled. "You will. We all do. The point isn't to be perfect. It's to remember you can begin again. Every moment is a new pebble." Months passed. Emily's eyes no longer carried that lifeless haze. She still faced struggles. Her job hadn't changed. Her apartment still echoed, but she had changed. One morning, Grace wasn't at the door. Emily waited. Hours passed. The villagers whispered the next day that the old woman had passed in her sleep, peacefully, with a smile on her face. Emily wept, but not from despair. She returned to the pond alone, holding the same small pebble Grace had given her weeks ago. She whispered, "Thank you," and dropped it. The ripples danced again. From that day on, Emily became the one others came to when their skies turned grey. She didn't preach, she listened, and when the time felt right, she offered tea and truth, and always, always the ripple. Moral of the story: happiness is not found in what you possess, but in how you perceive. It begins when you stop seeking it outside and start cultivating it within. One thought at a time, one ripple at a time.